welcome everybody for our, what is it? It's May 22nd, our May 22nd meeting of the Community Service Financial Assistance Program Grant Subcommittee. And thank you for all those who are attending. And we thank everyone who applied for a grant. And look forward to dispersing some money today, which is which is great. All good causes, all co-side causes, and really appreciate this opportunity to do this. And I love serving on this subcommittee. And Vice Mayor, anything you want to add to that?
I just want to concur. You know, it's one of the highlights of the year, I think, is doing good, you know, clear good. Right.
And it reminds us just how many groups we have out here who are doing interesting things and being innovative. And as we come out of COVID and enter the new normal, it's good to know that we've got groups out there ready to go. So
that's right.
So staff has a process here for how we want to do this, and we're ready to go.
Sure. So since you've all had the chance to review the applications, I assume, I figured that we'd go through a list. I have a spreadsheet with all of the organizations, the program names, the requested funding amount, any prior funding they've received, and then section for notes. And then there's, we'll focus specifically on the priority criteria that was listed on the application in terms of reviewing these applications to make it a bit more streamlined. And so I figured what we could do is I'll share the spreadsheet, and we can just go, to start off, we can go, you know, application by application and just discussing them to start off. So I'll go ahead and share my screen.
I think to streamline it, it might be easier if you have some clear thoughts on any of them as we go through. You know, we can kind of just do a thumbs up, thumbs down, or maybe, and we'll indicate those, and then we can dig deeper into those that are maybes or where there's a difference of opinion. Mm-hmm. If that's okay.
Yeah, that works. All right, let me share my screen. All right, can everyone see this? And do you mean to zoom in?
I can see it okay. How about everybody?
I wouldn't mind it being zoomed in 1 or 2 clicks.
Okay.
Yeah, zooming in would be good.
Okay.
And then I'll have the priority criteria here on the side, but let me know if you need me to go back to that. And maybe we can go over that first, actually. Yeah, so again, the priority criteria listed on the application. This is not the sole criteria, but these were priority areas that we had identified. So the first being that the goals of the project or program organization align with City Council priorities and strategic elements. Second being that the organization or program is specifically providing COVID-19 relief services. Third being that the organization or program is actively working to expand diversity and inclusion, and that they provide some form of community outreach services. And lastly, that the organization or program incorporates innovative thinking that addresses new circumstances due to COVID-19. So those are...
I also want to just provide a little context for those who may be just tuning in from the public. As you know, we last year for 2020 through 2021, we specifically decided to fund to the tune of $200,000 5 major organizations that we felt were already doing COVID relief and wanted to help them scale even more. And it included, as I recall, Co-Side Hope, Alice, Abundant Grace, Senior Co-Siders. I'm thinking I'm forgetting maybe that 5th one for a second here, but and we distributed those rather evenly. And what we decided to do at a council meeting not too long ago was we would actually keep that $200,000 again in place. We'd be doubling down for the next fiscal year. And then in addition, adding $50,000 to other groups that are doing things that might not have been, I mean, yes, COVID related, but not quite as not quite as constrained as those who are delivering, immediate, almost like emergency services, food, et cetera, homeless, rental issues, homeless prevention, all those almost visceral immediate needs. And then beginning to look at some other programs that are dealing also a little bit with some recovery pieces and things that might be opening up. And for that, we had a total of 50,000 to distribute for that. So I just wanted to give that context. And does that all sound correct to you, everyone, Matthew and everyone? I got that right?
I'll just, a slight correction.
Yeah,
it was more than 5 organizations. There were 5 at a higher funding level.
That's right, 5 at smaller.
But yes, the same organizations have the opportunity for that funding again this year. And this is an opportunity to spread the wealth, involve some additional organizations, and do some new things. So really appreciate the council's vision on that to continue to serve the community.
Great. Okay. All right. So back to our process here.
Sure. So going through, as Matthew had mentioned, maybe to streamline the process, I like his idea of just doing a very quick pass through all of the organizations and just kind of seeing where the subcommittee is at. And then maybe prioritizing color coding. We can color code green for, maybe like a definite yes, yellow for a maybe, red for a no, at least to start. So then we can start a conversation and focus on the yeses and the maybes and kind of go from there. Does it sound good to the subcommittee?
No, that's great. And I'm just alphabetizing my printout so I can start finding these things real quickly in my pile here. So, okay.
And Victor, if you wouldn't mind, as you go through the list, just give a really like a one-line summary of what it is, just to jog the memory of our subcommittee members.
Sure. So to start off, both ALAS and CERT, I would consider these somewhat of a grouped application, although they are for different purposes. They are both in support of the LISTOS program, which is similar to CERT. Sorry, is everyone hearing the feedback?
Yeah, I think we should all mute if we're not speaking.
Yeah.
Is there any way you could zoom in a little bit more?
Oh, yeah. Is that good?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. So LISTOS is similar to CERT, but it is specifically aimed at the Latino Spanish-speaking community. And so noting the importance of getting those groups involved in kind of helping themselves in case of an emergency. CERT had been working with Coastside Fire for a program, and then had solicited the help of ALAS on the outreach portion. And so the ALAS application and their request is specific to the outreach for the LISTOS program and kind of helping run those programs in Spanish. And then CERT's application is more specific to completing their backpacks that they give each participant because they have not been able to acquire the funds to complete the backpacks. And actually, that was one that was dropped off here, and I'll show it. This is what the backpack looks like. It's a little drawstring, and they have different materials in there, informational, it's all in Spanish, and then a first aid kit, stuff like that. So all helpful, but this is what the funds for CERT would go to, whereas the funds for ALAS would go towards outreach, education, and involvement in the program, a wrench and stuff. Those two, and ALAS was asking for 10,000 for their portion, and CERT was asking for 5,000. So starting with these two, does the subcommittee have any initial feelings of a yes, no, or maybe on these two?
I think the CERT backpacks are a good idea. I think some financial assistance is definitely needed for that. As for the outreach piece with the loss, I'd be willing to maybe $2,500. I think 10,000 is a little high for the outreach. Just estimating, and I noticed that the governor's budget has, like, I think it was between 50 and $100 million for grants for lease dose projects, which will, start being available the fiscal year starting July 1. So there's going to be fiscal resources for outreach programs and things like that. So I'd be willing to go for about 2,500 for a loss, but fully fund the search request.
Mayor Branson, I believe you're muted.
I wasn't sure. Are we going through actual funding pieces or just the ones we're giving an initial thumbs up or thumbs down? I just wanted to track with the process.
I think right now the thought is to quickly go through them and do an initial thumbs up or thumbs down or a maybe, and then I'll color code them green, yellow, or red, and then we can go back and have more in-depth discussions.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I just wanted to double check that. Okay.
So that would be green for me, for both of those then, and then we figure out the funding.
Okay.
Yeah, that's kind of where I was at. Yeah, I'm green, but then want to discuss a little more on that funding part. So, okay. I am, let's see, 3, we'll take turns. Yeah, I'm definitely green on Cabrillo Education Foundation. I think they're doing a lot of innovative stuff, and folks who work with them and work over there. So yeah, definitely green, and then we'll figure out some of that funding piece.
Yeah, that's definitely green for me as well.
Okay. And then the Korea Unified School District, this is specific for their Big Lift early childhood education program, specific to reading and very young kids. We have funded them previously, I believe at $15,000 2 years ago.
Let's see. Do you want to start on it? Well, no, I can.
Yeah, I mean,
go ahead.
So I would say, I think green. I would recommend, I'm not recommending the full funding amount, but I think, another good program would be willing to consider, some amount.
Okay.
Yeah. I was thinking, there might be some other programs, where I'm stacking that in terms of total priority, but I would like to keep them up there as green for now and see. But I probably would almost come back to them towards the end of some of our funding stuff to see where we are with other stuff, to see how much, to kind of figure out how much we put in there.
Maybe a yellow then.
Yeah, I don't know how many different, something like that.
Yep.
That's good.
Next up, we have the Coastal Arts League, and my mistake, there were 2 applications that were included in their packet, but it was the same application. It was just submitted twice under different names. So the both applications are for funding for the Public Art Gallery and outreach for the Art Gallery.
Yeah, I'll start out on this one. Yeah, I like this one. We didn't have too many programs focusing exclusively on art, so I thought this kind of distinguished them. And there was also some really, I thought, quality equity outreach and focus on kids. So yeah, I like that it was something different that I don't think we had funded in the past, right? Yeah, I don't think there was any prior funding. So I like to put that in green for now.
Vice Mayor, any thoughts are okay with that? Okay. Moving on to Coast Pride. This is for their health and wellness, addressing COVID-19 impacts. I think that this is for specifically for mental health and physical well-being programming, specifically for the LGBTQ plus community in Half Moon Bay. So it's mostly mental health focused.
Yeah. My understanding is that, is this okay to bring up, Matthew, that we have some other funding not under this program?
Oh, yes, yes. In the current fiscal year, we provided $5,000 through our community services, not the program, but just through our regular budget to help support the creation of the new Pride Center on Main Street.
Right. And so knowing that as context, at this point, and at first when I was reading through these originally, I didn't realize that we had already given, and then I was refreshed on that. So I think for now, I would put that in our, what's the other color we're using?
Red for no.
I wish it was, no, I could see between red and green. Okay, let's do red. Let's do red.
Make it purple.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I think, we have other organizations in the community with established capacity and experience with mental health issues. And I could certainly see Coast Pride, partnering without getting, the grant from the city. And I think our mental health providers ought to be partnering with all groups. I mean, to address diverse community needs. So I'm also in the red category right now.
And, the Vice Mayor brings up a really good point. If we see that an organization is partnering with a larger group like ALICE to do something like mental health services, we're keeping that in mind, that when we speak with ALICE and how they distribute their mental health funds, we sometimes have conversations where we make a request, well, can you earmark some for, this group? Can you earmark some money for, children between the ages of such and such, an elementary school here on the coast side? And Alice is always really receptive to those conversations. And so, yeah, there's kind of like a larger picture too as we start going through these.
And I apologize, it looks like we lost Victor, good old coastside internet reliability issue probably. So I was kind of duplicating what he was doing. Am I zoomed in enough? Can you see my screen okay?
Yes, terrific.
Yep.
Okay. All right. So then we go to Coastside Land Trust.
Yeah, I think signage is in order there. I think it is probably, I think you could probably fund it through our budget, our public works budget or parks budget or something like that. Or, is part of the completion of the coastal trail, in that area. So I'm suggesting red at this point, and another way to fund that.
Yeah, when I first read that, I was thinking, is this for grant funding or could it be done through some public works and money if they need some help with that? And we just, haven't really had that conversation. And so I'd want to have that first before, putting in this to yes or maybe of what, if there's an alternative source on that. So, yeah, it makes sense to me.
Thanks for stepping in, Matthew. My internet just dropped, of course, in the middle of this. So maybe it's better if you just keep it up in case I continue having this issue.
I'll keep going, but I'll let you run the show.
Okay. So next up, we have Conservation Earth, right? Okay. So Conservation Earth is, they're looking to provide childhood programming in the summer, specifically focused around, sorry, let me pull up my notes.
They have it sounds like a shelter where they have animals that have been injured or otherwise imprinted by humans that can't be released back in the wild. And then they use those animals as ambassadors to work with, provide education and camps and those types of things. And I believe this funding is specific for those camps. operational funds for those camps?
I like the idea of thinking about some certain summer programs, you know, especially for kids as we start coming out of this, and it's almost like in a recovery kind of category for me. Honestly, we haven't given to, we haven't given to this group before. So anytime I hit something like this, I just kind of automatically put, like, in my mind anyway, green for now, probably one of the, you know, a lower amount, almost like a little bit seedish kind of, even though it might not be a brand new program, but for first time investments, we'll learn more later, see how it goes. So yeah.
Next up, we have Centro de Libertad. Their request is
Hey, Victor, we didn't hear from the Vice Mayor.
Oh, sorry.
Did I miss it? No.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's okay. I agree with that approach. So Conservation Earth is also known as Wild Mind, and they do very robust fundraising, and they have programs, you know, beyond Half Moon Bay. So I'd be willing to. I agree with Robert. You know, some funding for, you know, coast-related programming, but you know, not fully funded. You know, talk about even TBD is fine for now.
Let's see. Yes. So El Centro de Libertad is Libertad.
So their request is specific to substance abuse education prevention in schools.
Yep. Yeah, I like this program a lot. Councilmember Jimenez has brought up the opioid crisis, which is quite real all over San Mateo, including Half Moon Bay. And there are lots of issues in the schools. I really like the fact that they were going to be partnering with the Youth Leadership Institute, which is a group that I really admire and like working through, and I think is actually a essential partner in this and looking at, you know, drug issues with youth and you know, different peer counseling, et cetera, that they've already started to do. So, and we can leave that as a TBD, but yeah, definitely green. That's a definite green, I think.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it was very smart to have the partnership with YLI, Youth Leadership Institute. Again, a very you know, confident organization who's doing phenomenal things with teenagers and young adults. I think that was smart. So I agree, funding, you know, TBD.
Next up, we have the Half Bay High School Athletic Boosters. Their request is specifically for improvements to their athletic training programs facility, and more specifically, the purchase of some new equipment, including treatment tables, cardiovascular equipment, so a treadmill or a bike, and rehabilitation equipment.
Yeah, I'm suggesting red for the boosters. I think that's a better, that's more appropriate for a booster program to fund, you know, with you know, with parents who have kids in the athletic programs in combination with the school district. I just don't feel that that's relative to the city's goals here.
Yeah, I felt like there's been asks made before, at least directly to me as a council member. I check it out. You know, I feel like we've kind of shied away from that for reasons that Vice Mayor Ruddick has mentioned as not necessarily appropriate for this particular funding program. So, and you know, the other thing I'll say is, you know, in our $200,000 program, you know, we are looking at athletic programs and Boys and Girls Club. It's not an issue around athletic programs per se. We're just trying to, you know, we're trying to figure out which ways we want to go for the program that we most want to prioritize. It's not saying anything negative about a boosters program, but just ones which as a city we've decided to prioritize to invest in through this program.
Okay, moving on, we have Hope Services. Their application is for community-based day programming for adults with developmental disabilities, and that includes transporting them to different programs around the county, as well as providing programming themselves.
Let me just remind myself. Yeah, I think, and again, green, definitely green, not specifying an amount, but, and I don't believe we funded this in the past, right? Yeah, no, we haven't. And I think as we look at diversity issues here on the coast, working with folks and adults with developmental disabilities, it's a very specific diversity issue, and folks are often kind of in the shadows a lot in terms of, you know, population generally is aware of. So, yeah, I was really happy to see this request, and we'll figure out the amount a little bit later.
Yeah, I concur with Robert. I think it's a community with, there's quite a community on the coast side actually, and would benefit from some assistance. So I support that.
Yep. Next, we have the Mavericks Community Foundation. Their request is for support for Coastside Gives 2022, specifically for the purchase of pole banners and a laptop that would help them with the program next year. And we have provided them with some prior funding in fiscal year 2018-2019. That was for a similar request for a different type of banner and an iPad at that point. They request this year is for $5,500.
I can take that one. As you said, right. So Mavericks Foundation is the organization, right, that administers Coastside Gives. And Coastside Gives, to me, it's kind of like our own Coastside, you know, United Way, right? It's an umbrella organization that then gives out, you know, distributes money and administers the distribution of that money to many, many different organizations. And last year, Coastside Gives collected $700,000. This year, they collected $1.4 million, which is really unbelievable. So I think the community really got behind the fact that there are a lot of organizations in need. And this particular amount was going right towards some banners, so kind of some communications pieces. And, you know, I thought based on all the other needs and based on the fact that they seem to be, you know, much better funded this year, I really wanted to wait on that. I mean, I could see putting that in yellow, you know, maybe, but kind of wanted to wait to see what else we wanted to prioritize in terms of some of the needs out there.
Yeah, I love Coastside Gives, and I'm grateful to Mavericks Community Foundation, but I don't think the city funding other groups' fundraising is a really good use when there's real needs to be met and funded. So, you know, I was thinking red, but you know, if Robert wants to leave it open for a bit, yeah,
so yeah. I could have gone either way, but I just wasn't sure on that, so wanted to hear from the rest of us on that. Okay, Purple Heart. Yeah, why don't you describe that one?
So the Purple Heart Anglers Incorporated, their program is, as listed there, is the Disabled Veterans Fishing Program. And unfortunately, I don't feel like they provided that much background on the program, other than that it would be, the money would be used to, purchase 2 charter fishing boats, or at least charter them, and fishing equipment, lunch, liability insurance, and other expenses for 70 participants. And it seems that the program is really aimed at disabled veterans and kind of helping them with mental health and other stuff like that.
Yeah, you know, I felt that, again, it's a diversity issue that actually, you know, is a classic of intersectionality. Veterans groups alone are a group that we, you know, always, you know, as communities, we try and work with and make sure they're prioritized for jobs. They get certain, you know, points when you apply for a job if you've been a veteran, and I think that's rightfully so in return for their service. And here, the intersectionality is we're talking about disabled veterans specifically. And I also thought it, you know, it fell nicely into, it's an innovative program. I thought mental health, get some disabled veterans who are interested, you know, it's pretty coast-side focused, right? Getting folks on a boat, doing some fishing, you know, having a couple of, you know, nice outings. And by the way, I got to say, Purple Heart Anglers, I couldn't help think, wow, what a great name for a coastside rock and roll band. That's just great. I just love that name, you know, that is just great. Loved it, love the concept, love the idea. And so, yeah, I'd like to see them in the green, and, you know, we'll figure out how much money to be determined, you know. That was my thinking on there. But.
Yeah, I just want to point out that for Purple Heart Anglers and Camp Sea Hugger, there's a wonderful grant program administered by my employer that would be a perfect funding source for both of them. And it's called, it's the State Coastal Conservancy's Explore the Coast program. And the governor just put $14 million in the state budget for this program. And it's all about funding organizations who take kids and adults and families coastal outings, coastal experiences. It might be a day camp, it might be an overnight camp, it could be boat rides, but it's for folks who either live far enough inland they don't get to the beach very much, or they're lower income, or they're disabled, and there are barriers for them to access the coast. And this program helps, you know, eliminate those barriers and funds many different organizations. So I would say I'd be willing to give some money this time, but I think we ought to steer them into the Explore the Coast grant program, where they might do, you know, much better and get more of their programs paid for. So I would say some amount for both of those for now, and then let them know about this program. So I lumped Sea Hugger in with Purple Anglers, Robert.
All right. I was not aware of the Explore the Coastside grant program, so thanks for bringing that up. And if maybe staff can make a note that we could connect them up with that. And it's sponsored by the state, you know, Coastal Conservancy, $14 million out there that might be able to supplement, because they also may or may not be aware of some of that money. So that's great. Fantastic. Okay. Our next one. Did we in effect actually, in a sense, say green on Sea Hugger too then? I know it's different. It's a camp.
Yes, I did. That's what I was inferring, yeah.
Got it. Okay, because that's the summer camp program. Great. Okay. Two off there.
Next up, we have Starvist, which also provides early childhood programming on the coast, and they work very closely with the school district.
I put them a little more in the red. They're located over the hill. They are, again, more of one of those sort of larger groups like United Way that gets to quite a few different programs. They currently have $14 million in budget, and they subcontract with Alice and Puente. And so to be kind of consistent with some of what we were talking about before, I see I prefer our funding to actually go directly, rather than through them, to go directly to the programs that we're already familiar with and keep that pass through and administrative fees, things like that, minimized, and work it that way. So I probably would have them in the red at this point for that.
Yeah, I would agree, for the same reasons, basically. I mean, a worthy organization, worthy work, but yeah, more of a pass through.
Moving on to St. Vincent de Paul of San Mateo County. The request is for $5,000 for the grocery gift card program. They give these out at Our Lady of the Pillar at the pantry there. And they noted that $5,000 would provide $25 gift cards to, I think it was 200 families, or approximately 1,000 individuals over the course of the year.
I'm a yes on this one. Green for go.
I had a question on that, maybe for Matthew on that, which you might have a sense of, or Victor, both. With St. Vincent de Paul, so when we go back to our $500,000 group, I wasn't sure if they were in part incorporated into that. Was that?
They're not. Probably what you're remembering is partway through last year, the council decided to use $200,000 out of the Affordable Housing Fund to provide emergency rental assistance, and $100,000 of that went to Coastside Hope, and $100,000 went to St. Vincent de Paul. Coastside Hope is kind of the first line because they have a lot of other affordable housing programs.
That was it.
And then they refer those that they can't serve down to St. Vincent de Paul. So they've been distributing those funds this year.
Yeah.
I have a follow-up question. Like, are those monies actually being used? I mean, I've been reading in the paper the last couple of days that, people aren't tapping the, the eviction prevention funding for various reasons. But so that money is being...
It is being used. The St. Vincent de Paul portion of that, they work very, very closely with Coastside Hope. Theirs lagged Coastside Hope because, again, Coastside Hope is that first line, and they do what they can to serve people with various programs. And then as their funding ran out, or if there was circumstances that they couldn't serve a family, there's an issue with a sublease or something where their stronger documentation requirements couldn't be met, then they'd refer them to St. Vincent de Paul to try to provide some supplemental services. So, Victor, do we have an update, a recent update of how much of that money is spent? I know some of it, a good portion of it was spent as of a couple of months ago.
As of a few weeks ago, Coastside Hope, I think, only had like $1,000 left. And then it would, they would start referring a bit more to St. Vincent de Paul. And when I'd spoken to St. Vincent de Paul, they expected an increase in requests for help as the state program winded down. I do know that there's been some talk lately about extending that, I believe, but I'm not quite sure exactly where the state is. But they do expect a significant increase in need in the coming months.
And especially as Coastside Hope is unable to serve as many people because they've exhausted their funds.
So So I just wanted to be clear on that. St. Vincent de Paul exhausted all their 100,000 emergency rental assistance, because you mentioned Coastside Hope.
Sorry, Coastside Hope has exhausted all of theirs. They're the front line, and then St. Vincent de Paul is the backstop for the harder to reach folks. And so we can get you specific numbers for St. Vincent de Paul. I know that they've used a large portion of it, and it's going to just accelerate as other programs dry up.
And do we know if St. Vincent de Paul exclusively gives the 100,000 literally just to rent money, or do they also do some food stuff to help out renters? You know,
for that funding, it came out of our affordable housing fund. It had to specifically be for housing. St. Vincent de Paul, as an organization, does provide food instability. They provide a broad spectrum of service.
Right. Okay. Great. Thank you for clarifications on all that. So I'll just make a couple of notes here.
And then we had, for the vice mayor, a yes on this, green.
That clarification really helped. So I'm okay with putting that in the green. And we'll put, everything is TBD basically right now, right? So we figure all the amounts out.
Yeah.
Yeah, earlier on I had some exact amounts when you got into more detail, but from then on it's been TBD.
Okay, great. HEAL project.
Next, we have the HEAL project, and this is for their intensive garden program, which teaches students about health, agriculture, and the environment. And it's a 26-week garden-based education program designed for 2nd and 3rd grade students, and this would take place at Hatch Elementary School.
Let's see, I guess I'll start on this one. I really like the HEAL project. It involves food, it involves working with children. I think it's a fantastic education program, and anyone who's been over to the farmers market any Saturday morning, they've got their own booth. And I'm always buying something from their booth. And I just think it's fantastic for kids to, it brings, it's a great education program that teaches kids viscerally, this is how you plant food, this is how you care for it. It gives them a much better sense of the environment. It's not just from the grocery store. And all this stuff just doesn't grow on trees and magically appear. And I think gives them a lot more respect and interest in what the ecosystem looks like that supports agriculture. So, green for me.
Yeah, I would concur. I don't know exactly what amount at this point, but I think it's a great program. I think kids need to learn how to grow food, for sure.
Okay, next we have the Friends of Fairlawn View Parent-Teacher Organization. Their request is for assistance in upgrading their outdoor classroom response to COVID-19. So it provides students with innovative, fun, and safe space for learning during the COVID-19 pandemic and beyond.
I'm a no on this one. I'm a red on this one. It's an elementary school in Montana, basically. Yeah. I think it's a great program. I hope they can fund it, but I think we need to focus our resources closer to home. So I'm a no.
Yeah, my thought was it is actually a HEAL project program at Fairlawn instead of Hatch, right? And that's who's, and I felt that we're already funding HEAL. So yeah, I was, I'm okay with putting that in the red.
And lastly, we have Pacific Beach Coalition. And I'll give one update that wasn't included in the application because they did have some difficulty in submitting the application via our online portal, unfortunately. So they emailed me directly, but notice it didn't include the requested funding amount, which is $10,000. And the request is for the hiring of a naturist/leader for the Half Moon Bay area to lead beach cleanups and education programs, especially with increased traffic on the coast.
I can take this one. So I'm very high on Pacific Beach Coalition, and I guess we already have some relationship with them, and they do some beach cleanups down here. And what I like about their program is that, they actually do a lot of outreach on the peninsula, and they actually, schedule beach cleanups for people who don't even live in the area. And they come in and get education and do beach cleanups. And then, like, they stay and they eat locally and, help the economy in Pacifica as well. And it's a good way to teach people who come over, good beach etiquette. Maybe there's programs we can do in, the high schools over the hill where we've had problems with young people in the summer coming over and, tearing things up. So I really like the idea of the program, and I think we could benefit from having, a person dedicated to the coast, because right now their role is a little bit sketchy. But I'd like to try to find another way to fund that, whether it's through our sustainability funding or through a grant. It's just not that urgent, and they would have to hire somebody, and they don't know how fast they can do that. So I think it's a little premature, but I'd like to find a way to fund the program some other way, basically. So I'm saying red.
I agree with that. I love Pacific Beach Coalition. In fact, I think there is a family relative who will be a little pissed off at me when they find out that I'm putting that in the red. But just to show this is not favoritism, I agree with Vice Mayor Ruddock's reasoning on that for now. And okay, so now comes the fun part. That was the hard part, because we love all these programs and hard making some of these choices. So now we'll look at the funding amounts, and I assume this is already being done to help us out. If someone on staff can just sort of keep a running tally for us as we determine the amounts, so we'll kind of have a sense of, because we haven't necessarily prioritized which ones we want to talk about first, but
So based on the ones you've given a green or a yellow to, the requested funding amount total would be 126,000. Is that right, Victor? Did I?
Yeah. So there's a little work to be done, is what I'm hearing you say now.
Oh, hold on. I duplicated a couple there accidentally.
Okay.
Excel behaves different when I'm doing it while sharing my screen on Zoom, but it looks like that's it. So sorry, 106. So got to do some trimming to get down to that 150.
Nice.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just laughing because, I can mix up reds and greens. So I saw the red there and I said, wait a minute, is that the amount of just the ones that we didn't want to go for? And I didn't realize. So
make this one green.
I was like, oh my God, have we already overspent by that much? Okay.
No, it's 106. But what we'll do is we'll work in this. Sorry, I'm pointing at my screen and you can't see that. That's silly.
That's fine.
This column here, column G, proposed funding amount, we can start plugging, and you've already plugged some numbers.
Right.
And so we can use that to start honing in the amounts. So maybe we can go through the green and just identify if your preference is to fully fund, partially fund, and we can start plugging stuff in and then
great
numbers.
And again, just the process check for members of the community or grantee candidates who are just tuning in. We started out by doing a prioritization with green ones we're going forward with, red not going forward with, yellow not exactly sure, maybes. And we realized that just from those, we only have a $50,000 budget. And for the ones that we're now going to move forward with and determine amounts, the requested funding is $106,000. And where we are now in the process, we're going to figure out how to distribute $50,000. In other words, basically work with half. We have money to honor half those requests, and now we're sorting that out. Okay. this was specifically, so this was part of the CERT, the CERT program for specifically the Listos program for Spanish-speaking CERT graduates, of which already 100 have been graduated. And just correct me if I'm getting any of the facts wrong here. And now, as graduates, there are follow-up and some administrative pieces. Some of that follow-up includes equipment at $50 per backpack, which CERT provides directly. So we're kind of looking at these both in like one shot. The cost of the 100 backpacks at $50 a piece is $5,000. The administrative piece is following up with some of those folks administratively. The training for them has already been paid for and provided. It's my understanding. So this is more of an administrative follow-up. So I got that all right. And so I'm pretty good with the $5,000 for the equipment for sure. That's what CERT has to pay for, and really support the idea of making sure the entire community is included in the CERT program and everything CERT does. And I think this is a fantastic outreach effort, and really appreciate the effort CERT has put out to make sure that this happens. So, yeah, I'd like to hear from the vice mayor. I was kind of in between an amount like 2,500 or 5,000 versus the complete ask for that piece of the administrative piece. Then Alice.
Well, I think if you're talking about administration and outreach, that's usually a percentage of the total project, right? Typically in the state, it doesn't exceed 5%. So I think 2,500 is kind of generous if, you figure in administrative and outreach. And outreach can be done through other organizations as well, Puente, for trying to reach the total universe of people who might be served. So I was thinking that 2,500 would be adequate, especially when Listos is going to get a massive infusion of funding from the state beginning July 1.
Right. Okay, good. Thank you. So it is, right, it is all administrative. So yeah, let's, for now, I'm great with that. 2,500, 5,000. Cabrillo Education Foundation, they're talking about a very strategic project. I think they've got, it hits all our priority criteria. I think they're a great organization, have a lot of sophisticated both assistance and oversight of all the organizations they collaborate with when they spend that money, which is great. So I would say that's one of the ones I would go for, that full funding. I love the idea of a community resilience hub. We've talked a lot about community resilience as part of our economic recovery. And, looking for programs like this, which really, again, have a strategy where they're creating a whole hub, which will have many cascading benefits and effects, like an approach and a hub. So I feel good about that full funding for their ask.
Yeah, I'm supporting full funding. And, this idea of community hubs is really gaining a lot of traction, both at the state government level and in the nonprofit space. I think COVID shined a spotlight on the need for building connections among community groups and helping people, relate outside of their own households and get support outside of their own households. So if we're really interested in community building, this is an area that's gotten a lot of policy support and will get a lot of funding support over time. And this group, I think, is very capable at building programs. And I think I envision this basically as sort of like seed money to help it get off the ground, because I think once people see the value of it, I think they're going to attract, be a magnet for funding, and ultimately the program will be relatively self-supporting. So I think it's a good investment to make on the ground floor.
I think this is one we also want to get connected with the Coastside Recovery Initiative working groups. I think there's a lot of harmony between this concept and the work they're doing. And that group may be able to help them find additional funding as well.
The governor also put $150 million into the budget for community resilience hubs. The way the appropriation is worded, it's focusing mainly on helping with disaster preparedness. But I'm guessing that sort of programmatic approach is going to expand its definition to take in, more things like community health and stuff like that. So, the governor is like putting his money where his mouth is in terms of support of community resilience. And depending on how the group evolves, there would be substantial stand-up funding in addition to, foundations and private philanthropy and things like that.
Vice Mayor, what do you think of this one? Put this in the yellow. We're just doing green first and then coming back, or? Yeah, okay. So we're up to Coastal Arts League. And they were asking 5,000. I'm okay with 5,000 on that. It is one of the only exclusive art organizations, and I thought I liked a lot of the programs they were doing. They were working with school programs, 5 to 10-year-olds. More specifically, we're working with kids in Main Street Park area and providing weekly classes for those kids. So I thought it was one of the very few organizations, as we said before, focusing on art specifically. So what do you think, Vice Mayor, on that funding amount?
I would support that. I think, again, part of the community's health and wellness is having, healthy outlets for people to express themselves, whether it's recreation programming, mental health support, art. So I agree. I don't think ever given any of our art in our community, except being willing to take certain sculptures and install them in various places. I don't think we've actually funded, any sort of arts program. So I'd like to do that, actually. And
it's hard to underestimate the therapeutic effects of art with children. And that's why there are specific full-time professionals who are art therapists in the education system. So, yeah.
Well, and ALAS has, pioneered that with the populations that they serve, with music and dance and, building confidence in young people, confidence in themselves, confidence in their culture. So, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so our next green is Conservation Earth. And Yeah, that's when we're working with animals, correct? Okay. And I was listening to what the vice mayor was saying earlier that they've got a pretty robust program out there. I was originally thinking around 2,000 for that program. I don't mind coming back to that and seeing based on how much we have out of the 50,000 left after going through green, maybe adding another 1,000, but until I was sure, I feel there's a few like that I wanted to just kind of noodle on first before totally committing it. But
one criteria that we want to think about is how does our own contribution make a difference? So contribution to them, even at the amount they're asking for, in the big scheme of things, wouldn't, I don't think, be, the incremental benefit would not be huge relative to some of these other groups, for instance. So I think a small amount or none is probably appropriate here.
All right. El Centro de Libertad. The request was approximately 10,000. We've given 3,500 in the past. I really, the fact that this was specifically on drug abuse prevention and opiates, and the fact that we've talked about that as a council, and the fact of especially with the collaboration with the Youth Leadership Institute, I'd be inclined to increasing the prior amount to 5,000 this time around, but
I would support that.
All right. Okay.
And hopefully you can see the running total at the top, right here in the green.
Okay. Thank you. It's green. I hardly noticed it on the whole sheet there. No, it's green.
I can do a different color.
No, that's good.
What's the best color for you, Mr.
No, that's great. I do see shades, something that looks like green, but when I look at traffic lights and everyone says, yeah, it's green, they have always looked white to me because it's so bright that my color cones do not pick up any of the green. So I said, yeah, I stop at the white light because then I see the green. What's everyone talking about the green light growing up? Anyway. Okay, True Confessions there. Hope Services. Okay. And the crest there was 9,000. Yeah, I was thinking 2,000 or 3,000. I like the fact that it's for developmental disabilities. We haven't never funded anything for that. And I was thinking, around 2 or 3. I'd rather say 3 at this point for now. And then again, be one of those we might just take a look back on if we think that there's a proposed, or that green number on the top, stays under 50,000. We can have another look at that. Vice Mayor, any thoughts on that one way or the other? 3,000 is okay?
Concur with that approach for services, yeah.
Okay. And Mavericks, we don't do that. That's yellow. Purple Heart Anglers.
I would like to fund
what do you think
Sea Hugger at full.
And what was the request there?
7.
So go full out on Sea Hugger. Okay, I think I initially was thinking 5. After our conversation, I'm good with that.
5 would be okay.
Okay, and then I was thinking for Purple Heart Anglers, then maybe 2,000 then.
Can we hold on that a minute? I'd also like to give 5,000 to St. Vincent de Paul.
Yeah, let me see what I had on that. Yeah. Okay.
And then that leaves you with the HEAL project and Purple Heart Anglers as ones that you weren't sure of how much, but you wanted to fund, and about $7,500 of wiggle room. And then there's 2 yellows if you wanted to revisit those as well.
Right. I think we could do that. So if we said 7,000 to Sea Hugger, 5,000 to St. Vincent de Paul, and then if
maybe 5,000 to HEAL.
Yeah, that's 5,000 to HEAL. Now we've got 2,500. If we did 2,500 there,
are we already at 50,000?
That takes us to 50,000.
And that kind of takes care of the yellows.
Do you want me to start at the top and you can kind of look at these again? So you were in concurrence of 2,500 for ALAS, the full funding 5,000 for CERT, the full funding of 10,000 for Cabrillo Education Foundation, the full 5,000 for the Coastal Arts League, 2,000 for Conservation Earth, 5,000, so partial, for El Centro de Libertad, 3,000 to Hope Services, 2,500 to Purple Heart Anglers, 5,000 to Sea Hugger, 5,000 full funding for St. Vincent de Paul, and 5,000 to the HEAL project. And those that were come back and talk about later, Mavericks Community Foundation and the school district early intervention reading program.
And Mr. Mayor, this is a publicly noticed meeting, and I'm noticing that you have a member of the public who would like to speak.
Great. And by the way, the Cabrillo Unified School District Reading Program is in fact Big Lift.
Yes.
Just for those who, because that's how we wrote it down there. So I just want to make sure I was tracking on that one. Okay.
Matthew, was Pacific Beach Coalition included in that? I thought they were listed green before, but I could be wrong. No, they were red. Okay. My mistake.
Pacific Beach Coalition and Coastside Land Trust were 2. We were asked to work with the departments to identify other funding sources, either from the city or from grant opportunities.
Right.
I'd be willing to probably eliminate Wild Mind and Purple Heart Anglers to give some to the Big Lift.
Let's see. So
that would be up $4,500.
So it was eliminating Purple Heart Anglers, and what was the other one?
Oh, Conservation Earth.
Right. How about, look, I got to give something to the anglers just because I want to see what the heck it is. Give us 1,000 over to the anglers, you know, and what would be that, 3,500 to lift?
If you eliminated Conservation Earth, that would leave you $3,500, yeah, for Big Lift.
What do you think about that, Vice Mayor?
That would work.
Okay.
Okay. Do we want to take public comment before we finalize the recommendations?
Yes.
We have Cynthia Sherrill from COSIDE CERT. Cynthia, you are, please, yeah, you're able to talk now.
Hey, Cynthia.
Hi. Thank you so much for doing all of this today. It was a great opportunity to see the work that goes into presenting this and how the city is supporting so many very worthwhile projects. The reason I raised my hand is to explain a little bit more about the Listos Alas COSIDE CERT Alliance. The whole issue with this alliance is that it's synergistic. It has to have all three parts to work. The ALAS role is a incredibly important role in this because CERT by itself is not able to recruit Spanish-speaking members of our community in significant numbers. We had an 18-month grant at the beginning of it. It had a whole Listos portion at the beginning. We immediately sent a fire captain, a trilingual fire captain here from the coast side, to 3-day training, which he came out of in a distinguished manner, as you'd expect. And we began going to the Pillar Ridge Community Fair. We went to the Eucharist Festival at Our Lady of Pillar. We visited Moon Ridge multiple times. We went to various organizations around town to try to bring members to this program. And we could not. People were afraid of signing up for anything where their documentation might find its way inadvertently to authorities who would come and deport undocumented people, to be just perfectly blunt. That is the fear, and that fear is pervasive. And that has been our problem as we've tried to provide emergency preparedness education and resources to our neighbors who speak Spanish. So we, at the 11th hour, really actually the 17th month of an 18-month grant, we finally just went to a loss and said, please, we tried everything. And in 1 month, they found 52 Spanish-speaking members of our community willing to take this 4-hour Zoom program. It's 2 hours and 2 hours, and we graduated 52 people, and they received graduation backpacks and a Listos manual, which Listos provides. The money that was referred to previously from Listos, and they are getting a nice allotment from the state, that goes to fund their teaching program. It doesn't fund the individual communities' outreach needs. It funds equipment for them, it funds teaching for them, and that's why Listos' portion of our 3-part alliance is free to the coast side, because Listos uses their own money to do that. COSIDE CERT cannot give equipment by itself. In other words, we're not the source of just emergency. We have to train and then give equipment as part of the graduation kit. We do it for all the certs. We do it for all the Listos graduates. The Listos backpack is actually worth much more than the cert backpack because the cert, they just have more stuff in the bag. That is very useful to people who would need emergency preparedness equipment. And that's the reason for ALAS. They go out and we are training, and we propose to train 100 people, 100 new Listos Spanish-speaking graduates from this community. So ALAS is the trusted Spanish-speaking entity in the community who reaches out and identifies who should, who would want to participate. Then they line up the Zoom location, the Wi-Fi, the link. They send all of the correspondence, and then they take attendance. They answer questions. They shepherd them through both sections, because you have to graduate from both 2-hour segments in order to graduate. And then because it's Zoom and it's remote, people come to the ALAS offices in Purísima, and that's where they pick up their graduation certificate, their backpack, and their Listos manual. So that is what ALAS does for their monies. Now, I certainly understand we're part of a larger picture, but if we are, for example, allotted the $5,000, thank you so much, to fill those backpacks, which we're donating to give to the graduates, we're going to have a heck of a time recruiting 100 people within the year. And we'll just have, we'll do whatever it takes, of course. But I just wanted the bigger picture to be presented. Thank you.
Yeah. So my point is that some of that should be absorbable with their existing budget because they're doing this outreach anyway on other programs.
Okay.
So I don't see this as adding another layer of administration, right? So that's why I think $10,000 is excessive. Okay. Some of this ought to be absorbable with their existing appropriations. Okay. So I'd be willing to find a way to go up to 5, but I really don't see 10. This is part of their mission. This outreach is a key part of their mission.
Yes, ma'am, I understand.
It's Zoom meetings. It's not renting office space. They own the property. So I'm just a little skeptical of the $10,000 number. It hasn't been justified for me. Somebody does a lot of grants work. So I'd be willing to increase it to 5 and maybe get rid of the contribution to the anglers or some others. But 10 is not justified for me.
Well, Cynthia, let me ask you this. Does it make more sense, based on everything you're telling me, to give the 5,000 than for this important recruitment and administrative piece? And this is, by the way, I just want to make sure I understand. We've already had 100 folks who've gone through Listos, and now we're talking about the next batch of 100. Is that correct?
No, sir. We've on the coast side, we've had a total of 77. 52 of them were the Spanish-speaking Listos graduates in December of 2020. And then before COVID hit, we trained 22 seniors at Senior Coastsiders in Listos when it was an 8-hour program in English. Okay. So it's a total of 77 trained, only 52 in Spanish. But we propose to train 100 more in the July 1 to July 1 span of this grant.
Yeah, I guess I was a little confused, but this is forward thinking for a new 100 folks.
Yes.
And the outreach, because somehow when I was reading, I was thinking there was outreach to those who've already graduated to keep them,
Yes, sir, they receive that from the first.
Okay. So does it, you said the 50 bags we're talking about, $50 a piece, have been donated, is that correct?
Well, as part of our initial grant, the 18-month grant, we printed more backpacks because printed the bags because it was a use it or lose it proposition.
Right.
And what we wanted to do is train more Listos, but there was no time. So we printed the bags and held them, and now we're proposing to fill them and distribute them with the money from the CSFA grant. But we're donating the $1,000 worth of 100 bags. I mean, Cross-Eyed Search is doing that because we have them.
Right. City Manager, Bob, I got a quick question for you. As part of our, I know emergency services is something that we've got our mind on. Can $2,500 to kind of fill in this gap? Does that sound something reasonable that may could come out of the city budget? As CERT being an important part of, the overall emergency services provided to this city. Is that something?
Sure.
A one-off kind of thing here?
The budget is a policy decision of the city council.
Right.
You may fund anything you want out of that budget.
I can confirm, though, there is funding in the emergency services budget for these types of community initiatives. So if I understand correctly, what we're thinking then is 5,000 to ALAS and 5,000 to CERT, and 2,500 to CERT out of the CSFA grants, and then we give another 2,500 out of our emergency services fund.
Yeah, if that sounds both doable, reasonable, doesn't set any precedents that make you anxious, that seems okay. Because how do you feel about doing that, Vice Mayor? Is that something?
Can you can you describe that again from, you're talking about 2,500 only for CERT and then 5,000 for CSFA, then making up the difference on the bags in the city budget. Is that correct?
Exactly. Yeah.
We can live with that.
That would be outstanding. We would be so very grateful for that. And that would, you know, alas, I had hoped to have their representative on this call, but he had a concurrent meeting. And I can't speak for them, of course, but I believe that we can find 100 new Spanish-speaking Listos graduates and train them, Listos people here on the coast side, and train them in Listos and provide them with these backpacks. I think we can do that for 100 people for the funding you just set forward. And that would be a great asset to the community.
Agreed. Well,
I've reflected that in the list now. So 5,000 to ALAS, 2,500 to Coastside CERT, and then we'll work with Cynthia on the other $2,500 out of our general fund budget.
Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Can we go back to the spreadsheet again?
Yeah.
I just realized I had stopped sharing. I'm making these changes thinking you can see them, but you can't.
Yeah. I'm still thinking we're still at 50,000 now. Just changed a couple of numbers. I think that's
correct. Can you see this again?
Yeah.
So you'll see here, this has been increased to 5. We just swapped the 2, but with general fund supplement, we'll make up the difference for CERT.
Why don't you put a note in there so we don't forget, Matthew? Yeah, there you go.
awesome.
I mean, conceivably, you could have the entire CERT budget of 5,000 in the budget, leaving more for the grant program, other organizations in the grant program too.
Yeah, well, you know, we're experimenting here. We've already had the thing, you know, coming out of for the signs, the Coastside Land Trust.
Sure.
You know, so we're kind of doing some of that here, and we're innovating as we go because, yeah.
I'm good with this.
Yeah, and you know what? Down the road, as we get some more money coming down the pipeline from the Fed, state, this is a great spreadsheet, Matthew. You know, we can take a look at a few more things down the road if we get a lot more than we expected. We have a lot of competing things, but you know, that's life. That's how it is. So that's what we're trying to do, balance it all. But we do know
following the mid-year budget, we could potentially reconvene this group to take a look at this spreadsheet again and see if there's any additional work that needs to be done.
And I think the full council has been very amenable to those kind of second looks later on when we get more money and coming unexpected. So I think that sounds great. Okay. Is our work here done? Is there anything to add before we make some final closing comments?
Staff has its direction. We will prepare a report for the full council and get approval in June and start negotiating contracts with all these individual agencies so we can get them their money as soon as we can after July 1st. Get this great work moving forward.
Awesome. Thank you for all staff's hard work on this.
Again, I'll defer to Victor on this. He's the one that has really honed the process. Debbie, you remember the process before and the struggles we went through. So a lot of credit to Victor for his vision in making this a really streamlined and effective process for you all and just running with it. So thank you, Victor.
And thank you for staff for allowing us to work in some unexpected asks here about some, you know, alternative funding here. But it's, I like where we landed here, and I know there might be some disappointments out there. But like I said, we might get a second bite of the apple. Some more funding comes into play later that we'll take a second look. But I think this was a great initial effort at bringing in some innovative stuff, and I like the fact that. And just again, as a conclusory reminder, our total Community Service Financial Assistance Program grant is ending up at $250,000 for the next fiscal year. It's not just this 50,000, and I'm proud of this city and our council that that we're doing this. You know, it's only the last few years we've been doing this, and I think we really appreciate, mostly because we really appreciate all the work of all these fantastic organizations that once again prove that the coast side has each other's backs, and we want to fund those efforts. So thank you all. It's been a good hour and a half. Everybody.
See you at 4.
All right. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.